Good morning, everybody. My name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm back this week with our DesignShop talk. Try to do these on a weekly basis. I'm just getting back from vacation, so we're back to see what questions you might have and try to get them answered for you. If you have questions while we're live, type them in the chats. Don't send them privately. I don't tend to see those until after we're done. But if you type them in the chat, I will check over here in my little second screen where I keep track of all that stuff. Alright, so if you see me looking off, that's what I'm doing, is seeing what questions are coming in. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start. I only actually got one question for this week, so I'll go over that. So with that in mind, start typing. So if you have questions, go ahead and start typing them in. After the one question, I'll try to waste some time to be able to answer other stuff. So the question we had was, I have this, I'm using group names. Increase the volume. Oh. Alright. Helps if I actually put the mic out. Is that better with the volume? Is that better, Melko? Well, let me know. I had the mic buried under a book. Whoops. Alright, hopefully that fixes the volume issue. I guess I'll start again real quick since... Excellent. All right. So since I failed to put my mic out, let me start again. My name is Samantha Mirabal with Mocha's application team. Try to do these on a weekly basis. I'm just coming back from vacation, so we are back. If you have questions while we're live, please type them in the chats. Do not send them privately. I don't tend to see those until we're done. So send them, put them in the chat. I have another monitor set up over here. Where I can keep track of what's going on. Good morning, our autism crew, and Nicole, thank you for joining today. So I only have one question. So if you have a question, start typing it in. And if you are trying to type and not typing fast enough, you can just put please hold or 1 minute or something like that. And I will run my mouth longer or stare at the screen awkwardly and see what we can do. All right, so let's go. So the question was, hey, I've got this text. I'm using this in the group name feature. I want to keep the spacing the same between letters. How do I do that? Okay, so you got a few options here. The way I would suggest is figuring out the kerning on it and just using the auto-kern, because that way the kerning will be consistent between them all, right? So what do I mean by that? So if I go over to Calligraphy CS, all right, if I go to properties and I go to spacing and I turn on auto-kern, all right, that's going to put a space between those. So let's say I want that to be wider. I can say 30% or I can say 20%. So I would do this because as the text changes, it will hold it, SM, my initials, let's see. So it keeps that spacing consistent for that font, right? Now it gets script fonts in general. I don't recommend using the auto-kerning, but with what you're doing here with those capital letters and things like that, it should be fine just to use spacing, auto-kern, and just adjust that until you're happy with it. If you do the manual kerning here, it's going to change from every letter and everything you do, right? So that's not really a good solution. What you really want to do is use this auto-kerning. Okay, so that would be my suggestion for that one, would be to use the auto-kern feature. All right, so yeah, that was a question that was sent in. So what other questions might you have? Oh, this is where I went. I'm just giving you some time to type in. I did Rome, went to Italy, got to see some cool stuff with our family, and did some Greece, and even went to where The Godfather was filmed. So that was pretty fun. So what causes needle breaks when sewing on structured caps? Okay, so there's a few things that can be driving on that. So caps, when you load them, they're at an angle, right? So you've got the brim here, and then you've got the hat, which is coming down to the rounded part. So kind of like that, right? So that, I got a picture of a hat. Why don't I quit waving my hands and let's look at a picture of a hat. I know I have one in here. I have to. all kinds of crap in here. Okay, so you've got this fixed part. The hat is angled down. So imagine my bobbin thing is down here, right? So the further out this goes, the higher the hat is off of my needle bit, the arm, right? The higher the hat is off the arm. Okay, so what does that mean? It's up really high. That presser foot, if you don't adjust it right, it's going to hit that and slide forward. It's going to slide down the hat because the hat's at an angle up. So it's going to hit it and it's going to slide forward into your needle. All right, so there is a gear on the back where you can adjust the height of the presser foot. And for structured hats, that's very important, right? Because you need to be able to control that, raise it up high enough so that it's not flexing down and it's not driving that presser foot down into your needle. Over time, if you keep that presser foot really low, it's going to continue sliding forward and eventually it's going to kind of work it and bend it forward a little bit, right? So that would be my first thing, is check that your presser foot is at the right height for your hat. Okay, so that would be one. The second would be to look at your active feed settings, right? If they're needle breaks, if it's too tight, right? Meaning your active feed is too low, the thread's trying to pull too tight. As it makes a stitch, it's going to be pulling on it as it's trying to clear the hat, and it's going to overall flex it as it's moving to the next spot, possibly snagging and other stuff. So you're going to, so then when it goes to the next stitch, the needle might be kind of deflected a little bit. So if it's deflected when it goes to make a stitch, it's not going to go into the fabric. It's going to go crooked and break, right? So checking your active feed settings, looking at the type of needle you're using. If you're using a needle too small, it may be prone to deflections, particularly on that. And if it's deflecting too much, it might be breaking. So I would look at the presser foot height, your active feed settings, and then look at the type of needle. Using sharps is always helpful. You know, you can always go up to an 80 or a 90 sharp. That's always a good thing to help prevent those deflections in the needle. It makes it a bigger diameter, right? So it's less likely to bend. As far as what is the best needle to use, a sharp, right? And I'm horrible. So I do everything, and I know better. All right, so I know better than to do this, but I do everything with 7511 balls as a default because that's what I have in every machine, and I go the lazy route of not wanting to change all my needles from project to project. I know better than that, so I typically will run a 7511 ball into on a hat, and if it sews, great. I smile and move along. At the very first sign of trouble, I go, okay, I know better than this. I go change the needles to a sharp needle, and often I'll go straight to an 80, and so that's just how I do it. Like I said, I'm borderline lazy on it. I try to get away with bad habits, and then if it doesn't work, I switch to what I know works, which I switch to the best practice rather than, will this work? All right, so we did the needles. So yeah, 7511 sharp, or an 8012 sharp, that would be my preference. I've used 90s. I typically only use 90s on puff, but I tend to go straight to 80s and call it done. Let's see. When typing text with an apostrophe, how do I adjust the apostrophe height relative to the rest of the text? Sometimes the height isn't right to my liking. Okay, so let's look at it. Let's put an apostrophe S in here. Okay. So if you don't like where this is positioned, let's say it's down here and you're going, I want it up higher. How do you do that? I just moved it, but I didn't tell you how, right? So click on the text. You notice there's these black X's. If you click on that, now I can hold my control key down, and the control key lets you move it relative to the baseline. So I can actually turn my apostrophe into a comma by holding the control, but it only works while I'm holding the control key down on the keyboard, because otherwise now I can try moving it up all I want, and since I'm not clicking the control on the keyboard, it's doing nothing. If I hold the control key down, now I can drag it up and move it around where I want it, right? And then I can, of course, left and right drag it around at that point. Okay. If you want to scale just this one to make it bigger or smaller, you can do that with these handles, right? So I can scale it down. If I hold the shift key down, it'll hold it relative. So if what I really want to do is make it smaller, which that looks silly now, but if I wanted to do that, I could. Or if I wanted to make it bigger, I can hold that down and put it there, right? So you can adjust it around size-wise, location-wise. Off the baseline, moving it vertically up or down, you have to hold the control key down to do that. Okay. All right. So let me go back through the questions. I did those two. I did that. Cool. Bird nesting. Let me just, yeah, control. That's what you need to do. All right. So bird nesting on the back of caps. Bird nesting can be a sign of, well, bird nesting is your top thread is feeding too much thread, right? That's how it physically happens. A ton of top thread is coming down and it's getting hung up on the bottom and creating it. Typically, you'll see that when the thread pops out from under one of the rollers, all right? Or if your active feed is just way too high. Let's say you're running it at a 40 and it really needs to be running at a 10, right? So it's going to be shoving, all right, I'm making up numbers, but let's just imagine it's shoving 5 inches of thread and you only need half an inch of thread. So where's that other 4.5 inches going to go? It's going to nest up under the needle plate. So with bird nesting, I would look at, make sure your thread is under the roller correctly. It's not shooting out from under the roller. That's a sign that your rollers might be worn out and it's time to replace them. Or that your active feed's not too high. Those would be my go-tos for bird nesting. What's the correct distance between the presser foot and the needle to check? To make sure it's not bent, grab the 2.5 millimeter, oh my gosh, Allen key. And that's how I check it, is I make sure between the back of the needle and my presser foot, I have the 2.5 millimeter Allen key fits there. And if not, I bend it back where it belongs. I'm a tech, that's what I do, I just bend it back. All right. So Michael, I hope that helps. Presser foot gap adjustments. We got you a link there. We also have in the comments, we did get you a few links on troubleshooting, breaking needles when sewing caps, as well as, so that's out there for you to look at as well as this presser foot gap adjustment. All right. What other questions you might have before we call it a day? So let's see. I'm just waiting to see if anyone else typed stuff. That was in Florence. That was the Colosseum, Santorini, the Godfather in Sicily, the Pantheon, Pisa. And we went over to, I can't put all the pictures. I took too many, but we did the Acropolis over in Athens. Did all kinds of stuff. How do I know what the presser foot height should be? And how I know how to adjust it, but not sure what's right. So it depends on what you're doing. If you're sewing flats, it should just touch the surface of what you're doing, right? So flats being flat hoops, right? While you can have it jamming into the fabric, you don't want it floating above. So you shouldn't see a gap. Like if this were my presser foot, I wouldn't want to see a gap between my fabric and my presser foot. I would want it just touching. Now, if it's jamming into it, that's going to leave a mark on the fabric, which it cleans up with water, but it's just one more thing to do, right? Or with magic sizing, it's one more thing to clean up. And personally, I don't enjoy that. So I would suggest using, oh, good grief. Making sure that you adjust the presser foot on flats, that it just touches the surface, no gaps. Gaps is what causes the fabric to bounce around. On hats, it's at an angle, right? So if you make it not touch up here, by the time it gets down here, it's going to be floating in air. So there's going to be a balance there. Some of that is just figuring out what works for that particular hat. I used to keep, I don't do it anymore, but I used to keep a notebook with hat style and settings. And when I found things that worked or didn't work, I would mark those down every time I ran that type of hat, and I would just keep a list going. That way, next time I pulled up that kind of hat, similar, even if it was a different color or model or something, it's still the same general structure of the hat. I would start with those, excuse me. I would start with those numbers as a starting point to go from, and then adjust accordingly. So for instance, if I'm sewing on hats and I'm breaking needles left and right, what would be my first step? I'd pick up that presser foot some because it's likely sliding into the needle. I would check the obvious with my active feed settings, that sort of thing. If I saw a lot of flagging on something where it's bouncing around a lot, I would lower the presser foot. Like if I was shredding the thread, and because I'm getting flagging on the item moving up and down too much, which rubs the thread and causes, you know, that caterpillar that's annoying. So that I would lower the presser foot. So some of it comes down to just kind of learning how to see what's happening to decide what changes you need to make. But what I always did is once I had a project running well, I would write down those settings, you know, from my active feed to my presser foot height, all of that. And I kept a running book where I just put, you know, I actually used to cut out the little picture of the hat or the garment, whatever it happened to be, and tape it in and write the settings. And every time I did it, I'd flip to that page and start with that. If I changed it, I'd write the new settings down with what happened. So what else can I help with? Let me scroll back to the top, make sure I didn't miss any others. All right. So I don't see any other questions coming in. I'm going to hang on for another minute or two, just in case someone's frantically typing and I don't cut you off. But if you have here, let's do this. Don't forget, we have this nice little form out here where you can go click on that, type in your questions any time of day, any day, right? So if you can't be on these lives, but you can watch them after the fact, cool. Type in a question, that way it'll be there. And it'll be one of the questions that I have prepped ahead of time. If you're in the middle of something and don't want to have to, I see you, Nicole, we're fine. I'll hold up. So if you don't want to have to remember to ask while we're live, you know, I'm scatterbrained. I'll think of one thing and then it'll run away. Well, just type it into the form and it'll be there, right? So you don't have to remember it for later. So don't forget we have that form available for you to type in any time of day. And all I do is next time we have a design shop talk, I go pull all the questions from the last one. So where I ended off, anything new, that's what I put up, okay, as a starting point. All right, so don't forget about that. Nicole has me waiting, so we'll see what question we have coming. Again, if anyone else has questions, go ahead and type them in. Let's see. Get myself I had sent a question on the 18th, and I wasn't sure if you received it. Did you put it in the form? I didn't see any. Let me look. Because Drive. I'll go back to the form and look real quick. I only saw one question. I'm looking, one moment. All right, DesignShop. Sorry. There are the responses. I'm looking up the responses. Yeah, I have a question on June 4th and June 9th and no others. Oh, yeah, if you put it on the form, I see those. The application team email, I don't always see those. I'll have to go back and look. That I can go look those up. It's just not second nature to me. So I will have to look that up for you. I'm not even sure if I can get to that from my phone. Let me see. All right. Did Nicole did type in the other one. My needle is coming unthreaded occasionally when starting a new color. What might be causing this? That's usually called a misstart. It's usually caused by trimming. What type of machine do you have? Okay, Rachel, I will cover Trapunto and see if we get it covered. Okay, my needle's coming unthreading. So Nicole, that's first off, what machine do you have? Because if you've got like an XTS that has a selector and a knife separate, a lot of times the easiest fix to it's basically a mistrim. It's cutting the thread too short, so when it starts the next stitch, it pulls it out, right? So in those cases, typically just cleaning the trimmer really well and giving it some oil, that usually fixes it right up. The E16 has the hook on it, the S95 hook. Make sure it's not cracked. I believe we've got some, what's it called? I think there's some help articles on looking at that knife to make sure. So on the side, making sure there's no cracks on it, that it's not bent. If you've had bird's nests, a lot of times cleaning up those bird's nests incorrectly will actually bend the knife, which then causes issues with that. So those would be the two that I would start with, is looking at the condition of the knife, which is attached to the hook. It's you know, 2 screws, pop it on, pop a new one on. It's very easy to self fix and put a new knife on. So that's would be the part I would start at. If I had a question about digitizing, would it help to send the design? Can I add pictures to the question? So yes, if you have a question about digitizing, if you send the design, that works. Can you add pictures to the questions? Absolutely. So I've had multiple people. It'll allow you to attach 1 picture at a time to this form thing. I've had a few people submit it, and then they'll submit 2 or 3 things right after saying, here's picture number 2, picture number 3. I see them all, so it doesn't matter. Once you submit one, you know, it's easy to follow because I can see who submitted it, and it's quite obvious it belongs to the question before. So yeah, you can absolutely do that. Rachel said she had a question about making trapunto stitches go all the way to the edge. So let's look at a trapunto. So let's do a fill. So if I do a fill, cool, I got me a fill here. And I'm going to go into the properties, and I'm going to change it to a trapunto. And let's make this bigger so we can see it. All right, maybe even bigger than that. And I'm going to turn off the underlay just so we can see what she's talking about. So when you do these, it'll be more obvious. Oh, properties. All right. So trapunto, without trapunto, so if I turn that off and I just leave this, you'll notice it drops these stitches not coming all the way to the edge, right? So to make it go to the edge, you can turn on trapunto, and all the stitches now will go to the edges of your box, right? So just by turning trapunto on. So rather than using a fill with a wide density to create your trapunto look, you then go in, because that leaves these weird angles along there, you turn on trapunto, and that makes all the stitches go to the edge of your outline. From there, you can even tell it to trace the border, and that'll add a solid line all the way around. It depends on what look you're going to, but that's how you would do that. So Rachel, is that what you were looking at? If not, let me know. Let's put that down there. Yeah, so turning on trapunto forces that kind of short stitch to go all the way to the actual wireframe before it goes down to the next layer and sew across. All right, I'm trying to get to my application email. I just don't. I don't see it. Custom density. So effect, custom density, apply. It still works, right? So I can do custom density. Oh, cool. Oh, I see your question. Let's see. What did you send? Download. I'm opening it. One moment. Oh, cute. All right. Left is what you want. Right is what you're... Okay, so properties, trapunto, trace border, apply. What is it doing? Stitch angle, partitions. This one I might have to play with because it should work immediately just by turning on trapunto. And I see what you're saying. I'll play with that one and get back to you. I have a feeling it has to do with these holes, but I'll have to look at it. So, interesting. Well, that's cool. I like it. Thank you. I'll figure it out and let you know. All right. What other questions do we have? Because that's just oh, that's fun. All right. What other questions? Anything before we call it a day? That's kind of cool that it updated the response sheet while we were live. I didn't expect that. All right. I love a live stream where you just, oh goodness, narrate the stuff I do all day. That'd be entertaining. I've debated just recording some random digitizing projects. The funny thing is, I end up at times doing stuff and going, well, that was stupid. And then I delete it and go back to how I should have done it to start with. So I have admittedly some bad habits when it comes to digitizing. Like it is, and I know this intellectually, it's better to work from the back to the front, plan out what you're going to do ahead of time, think about it, and then do it. I am so visual. I want to digitize what I see. And then, so I will literally take a design and start at some random spot and just start digitizing what I see. And then when I'm done, I look at it and go, all right, now how do I make this actually sewable? Where it makes sense and doesn't have 10,000 trims and things like that. And then I spend probably longer than I should rearranging and redoing and adding the connector stitches and all that fun stuff. For me, it's my happy way of doing it because I don't know, I'm impatient. I want to see the finished product, and then once I see it and go, yeah, that's what I want, then the rest is fun. It's easy to, all right, now let's put this puzzle together and make it so efficiently. But that's just me. It's pretty funny if you talk to a bunch of digitizers, stick them all in a room and say, hey, here's this design, how would you do it? It's funny. All of us would probably get something that sews beautifully, but we'd all do it different. So that's, I don't know, that's the fun part of digitizing to me, is the art aspect of how I do it versus others do it. There's always something interesting going on. Yeah, going from digital art to embroidery is incredibly different. Print medias versus embroidery. Embroidery, you have to think about things like light colors don't cover dark colors very well. So if I'm going to sew a bunch of travel stitches, sew a bunch of black, and then expect a white fill to go over a bunch of black running lines, I'm going to see them ghosting through. So I have to do stuff differently. So it's pretty interesting of just planning the work and figuring that out and having to think about building it up, because it's a physical media. It's not just, well, I guess ink is a physical media, but it's something with thickness, right? It's like when people ask about blends, they'll go, all right, I want this blended like this. And you can do it beautifully in print media, right? It's like this beautiful ombre. And they go, now make that in thread. And you go, I have 3 thread colors here. How am I supposed to make them blend? They physically don't, right? They're a physical item. So it's interesting getting that aspect conveyed and trying to get that same ombre look with something that's just laying next to it. So it's a trick of the eye and light and stitch directions and things like that. Cool. All right, any other questions before we call it a day? And why is my phone doing that? It's annoying. All right. Well, I will be back next week. Don't forget typing your questions. Like I said, I got a little Excel sheet where they all go, and I'm able to pull up whatever files you attach. If you've got more than one attachment, just submit multiple. I have people do that all the time. Like I had May 8th, I think someone submitted 4 things in a row, and it was just, first was the question, and the other 3 were pictures, supporting pictures. Okay. All right, y'all. Have a fantastic week. Have some fun sewing. Let us know what you want to learn, and I will be back next Thursday. Wait, what is next Thursday? I know July 4th is coming. Do I need to change the date? These holidays are all sneaking up on me. Oh, we're good. So next Thursday, we'll be good. All right. I will talk to you then. Have a fantastic weekend. See you next week. Bye, everyone.